Welcome back to Pivot to Profit, where personal growth meets business strategy. And I'm your host, your favorite host, TaVia Woolley. So, y'all, we've been on a journey together. Over the course of this series, I've taken you through the wins and how I've built them, the tactics that created the real growth, the framework behind my thought leadership, right? The environments that shaped me, the books that rewired how I think. And in my last episode, I got very real and raw in a way that honestly just always makes me uncomfortable. I was sharing my mistakes that cost me over $300,000 and exactly how they happened. That episode required something from me. It required me to sit in my truth, not something I really wanted to do, to acknowledge what I had allowed, what I had missed, and what those experiences ultimately revealed about the gaps I still needed to close. So today's episode is the natural next question, right? Where do I and you and we go from here? So this is not just like where do we go from here in business? It's not just another strategy, but it's more about as a person, because every level of business growth I've experienced has been preceded and supported by deep personal development work. And let me just point out one thing. That work happened quietly, consistently, intentionally, behind the scenes. This episode is about that work, the investments I am making in myself right now, the structure I built to close the gaps that allowed for the exploitation, the prototype I've developed for the woman I'm evolving into this next season. What I'm not gonna do is do a motivational pep talk. This is what I call a blueprint. I'm sharing it because one, I believe in transparency and maybe it can inspire you. So let's get into it. The prototype, building a blueprint for your next self. Let me start with something I've never heard anyone else describe quite this way, but it has become one of the most useful tools in my personal development practice. I created a prototype of the woman I want to evolve into in this next season. Now, what that means, practically speaking, is this. I've identified people I genuinely admire. Some of them are public figures. Some are professionals in my field. Some are people I have access to but don't get to engage with deeply. They are each operating in ways I respect. That could be their presence, their discipline, their standards, their style, and their influence. And I pulled the specific qualities from each person that resonated with the version of myself I'm building toward. Not to copy anyone, so that's not what we're doing here. And not to become someone I'm not, because we don't do that either. But to be more specific, it's the attributes I want to develop and to have a living reference for what those attributes look like in action. This prototype becomes my personal development curriculum. It tells me what to study, what to practice, what to invest in, and where the gaps still exist. So let's think about it this way. When an architect designs a building, they don't start from nothing. They study structures that have worked. They borrow principles from great design. They create something new, but it's informed by excellence that already exists. And that's what I'm doing with myself. In the books that have built my thinking episode, I talked about StrengthsFinder and how understanding my patterns helped me stop trying to fix myself and start leveraging myself instead. The prototype takes a step further. It asks, beyond your natural strengths, what qualities do you need to intentionally develop to operate at the level you're called to? So here are some lessons learned. Growth without direction is just motion. When you define the specific person you are becoming with real attributes, real concrete examples, and a real curriculum, you stop wandering through self-development and you start building with intention. So here are some action steps for you. Identify 3 to 5 people you genuinely admire. They don't have to be in your industry. They don't even have to be accessible to you. They just need to represent qualities you need to embody. For each person, write down the specific quality that draws you to them, not general words like successful, confident. Be precise. Her boundaries, his preparation, the way she commands a room without raising her voice. Compile those qualities into a personal development prototype. This becomes your curriculum, the thing you are actively working toward, not just aspiring to. Now, we don't just create one, we review the prototype quarterly, maybe even monthly, weekly if you need to. But as you grow, it will evolve. What you needed to develop 6 months ago may be a strength today, and a new gap will have surfaced to replace it. y'all, because that's real life. So my pillar one is health. Well, health is the real wealth. We talk a lot about business strategy in this space because, yeah, revenue, systems, positioning, growth, but I want to be direct about something. None of it works if you don't. You cannot build at a high level while running on a depleted body. You cannot think clearly, lead effectively, or make good decisions when you are chronically fatigued, not eating well, or operating with unresolved health concerns. I know this because I lived it. For a period of time, I was on a treadmill of fatigue that I kept pushing through because that's what we do. I'm not saying it's the right thing, but that's the reality. That's what we do. We grind, we perform, we show up. But underneath the performance, my body was telling me something I wasn't ready to hear. And it was screaming very loudly. I had anemia I wasn't adequately addressing. My sleep was disrupted. My energy levels were inconsistent at best. And all of that, and I mean all of it, was affecting my clarity, my capacity, and ultimately my business. So health becomes non-negotiable, not a goal, but a solid and firm foundation. I increased my physical activity. Tennis. I have loved tennis since I was a child, and I've returned to it this season, not just for fitness, but because tennis is one of the most strategically aligned sports a business owner can play. That's a shout out and maybe a little biased statement, but definitely try out tennis. But here's what I mean by that. In tennis, you lose to yourself before you ever lose to your opponent. The mental game, managing frustrations, staying present after an error, and trusting your training under pressure. That is the game. The physical skill matters, but the mental discipline determines the outcome. Does that sound familiar? Go ahead and nod your head. I work with a professional coach who sees my game objectively. He identifies my weaknesses that I have normalized, and he holds me accountable to improving them even when it's uncomfortable. Coach, if you see this, don't take this the wrong way. You get on my nerves at times. The structure has translated directly into how I think about business coaching and professional development. You need someone outside of yourself who has a clear view of what you can't see. I play 3 times a week. It is a stress release, a strategy session, and a mental reset all in one. So go play tennis, y'all. Now, on the nutritional level, I've made some investments. I do IV therapy and supplementation. I've also invested in direct nutritional support such as IV drips, B12 shots, and NAD plus treatments. That is to help address my energy and mental clarity at the cellular level. This is not me telling y'all to go get those things. Please do your research and find out what works for you with professional medical help. I want to be transparent about this because not everyone talks about it. When your body is deficient, no amount of motivation fills that gap. Honestly, I was so tired of pushing through. I wanted to actually feel the energy I was working so hard to project. Now, some people might consider these luxury treatments, and I'm gonna be honest, they are a financial investment. For me, I consider them maintenance. The same way you maintain your car, your systems, and your team, you maintain your body. And when you start treating physical investment as business infrastructure rather than indulgent, everything shifts. So here's my lesson learned. Your capacity to execute is directly connected to your physical state. Addressing health is not a detour from your business goals. It is the most direct path to sustaining them. Action steps. Schedule a full wellness panel this quarter. Know your numbers, whether that's iron, B12, D3, thyroid, cortisol. You cannot address what you haven't measured. Identify one form of physical activity you actually enjoy. Tennis, anyone? Not one you think you should do. Sustainability requires enjoyment. Commit to it 3 times per week for the next 30 days. Now, audit your sleep. If you are consistently getting fewer than 7 hours, I'm still working on that, or waking up unrefreshed, that is a business problem. Start there before you add any other health investment. If access to IV therapy or specialized supplementation is available to you, consider that a performance investment. Research, big word, research what your specific deficiencies require and address them directly with professional, credible, licensed help. Got it? All right. Pillar 2, mental health is part of the strategy. I work with a licensed therapist who's also a certified coach. I want to emphasize that combination, not to gatekeep, but because it matters to me. She is deeply qualified, and that depth of qualification is part of why the work we do together is effective. In the last 2 years, I've navigated two of the most significant life transitions a person can face. My mother passed away in March of 2024, and at this current time of this filming, I'm going through a divorce. Both of these experiences require real processing, not the kind you do in a conversation with a friend. Now, as valuable as those conversations are, I love my friends and I enjoy those conversations. But what I get from my licensed, credible person, the kind that happens when someone with no personal history, no stake in the outcome, and a trained clinical lens helps you excavate the patterns you cannot see yourself. And Lord, did I have a whole lot of patterns I did not see myself. That's what my therapist coach does. She recognizes my patterns in real time. She calls me on my behavior without the filter of friendship or familiarity. And because of that, the accountability is more effective than almost anything else I've invested in. Here's what I've learned about mental health work that I want you to hold on to. Processing the why behind your behavior is not a weakness. It is precision. When you understand why you over-collaborate, why you don't check references, why you remove yourself from situations where you are actually the most valuable person in the room, you can interrupt those patterns. Without that understanding, you just repeat them in different contexts with different price tags. And y'all, let's stop overspending on some money. The $300,000 episode? A significant portion of that cost traces back to patterns I was running unconsciously. This work is how I make sure I don't run them again. So here are some lessons learned. Unprocessed experience becomes repeated behavior. The most strategic investment you can make in your business future is understanding what's running in the background of your decision making. So here's some action steps. If you're not currently working with a mental health professional, begin researching therapists who specialize in high-performing women entrepreneurs or grief. Because remember, I got that too. All that's dependent on what is most relevant to your current season. So find someone who specializes in your current season of life. When selecting a therapist or a coach, prioritize qualifications and specializations over accessibility or convenience. The right fit may require a waiting period or a higher investment. It is worth both. Consider separating your emotional processing from your professional support. Your coach handles strategy, your therapist handles patterns. Both are necessary. Neither replaces the other. Begin a simple behavior audit. Where do you keep experiencing the same outcome in different situations? That pattern has a source, so find it. Pillar 3, image is a form of communication. So once again, I'm about to keep it real and raw because I think this is one of the areas where women, especially women who grew up in the way that I did, carry the most silent shame. I didn't grow up with examples of how to refine an image. There was no one teaching me how to dress for the rooms I was trying to enter. No model for what it looks like to build a wardrobe with intention to understand quality, to develop a personal aesthetic that communicates credibility before you say a single word. That gap followed me into professional life longer than I like to admit. In one of my earlier episodes, I touched on first impressions and how seriously they need to be taken. I want to go deeper here because this has been one of the steepest learning curves in my own development. What I know now is this: your image is not vanity, it is strategy. Y'all know I love that word, maybe because it is what it is. The way you present yourself communicates something before you open your mouth. It signals whether you belong in a room. It shapes how people receive what you're saying. It affects how seriously your work is taken. I am now intentional in every area of how I show visually, how I dress, how I present myself, how I style my hair, the investment pieces I select, the quality basics I build my wardrobe around. I'm not chasing trends, although I do love a good outfit. I'm building a visual identity that is consistent, elevated, and aligned with the level I'm operating at and the level I am moving toward. In the Go Shopping for Goals episodes, I talked about wearing a wow statement piece as a strategy for creating connection and starting conversations. That principle extends far beyond networking events. Every time you show up intentionally dressed, you are signaling to yourself and to the world, I take this seriously and I am ready. So lesson learned. Developing your image is not about meeting an external standard. It is about closing the gap between how you see yourself internally and how you present yourself externally. When those two things align, confidence follows naturally. Action steps. Conduct an honest wardrobe audit. What you wear most frequently should reflect the version of yourself you are building toward. not the version you've survived. Identify 2 or 3 investment pieces that represent your next level. Quality over quantity, always. One well-made item communicates more than 10 average ones. If this is a gap area for you, engage a professional, a stylist, an image consultant, or even trusted friend with a strong aesthetic that can provide perspective you cannot give yourself. Separate your style from trends. Build a foundation of quality basics and add personality through intentional pieces. The goal is a wardrobe that functions well, travels well, and photographs equally as well. Because in today's professional landscape, all 3 matter. Pillar number 4, hobbies, they're not optional, they are infrastructure. So I'm going to push back on something. There is a narrative in entrepreneur culture that hobbies are luxuries, that rest is earned, that play is something you get to do after you built everything else. I'm going to reject that entirely, and I'm going to say it with my whole chest. All work and no play is not a hustle strategy. It is a depletion strategy. And I have lived through enough cycles of depletion to know that they are expensive, personally, professionally, and financially. Right now, I'm actively engaged in tennis, Spanish, French, flute, and piano. And yes, I know how that sounds. You might be thinking that's a lot. But here's the thing I want you to understand. I'm not trying to become a professional in any of these. I am learning to enjoy this thing called life. For someone who has spent most of her life grinding, building, executing, delivering, producing, choosing joy has been one of the most countercultural and transformative decisions I've made. In the Going Shopping for Goals episodes, I introduced the concept of the $1 million hour. That intentional space after an experience where you extract strategy from what you have just lived. Hobbies are that space in a daily form. They give your brain something to engage with that isn't tied to outcome or output. Paradoxically, that kind of engagement produces some of the clearest thinking and most creative ideas I've had. When I'm on the tennis court, I'm not thinking about a grant deadline. When I'm working through a piano piece, I'm not running through a client list. In that mental break, that full presence is something purely for the experience of it. It is rest. It is renewal. It is the thing that makes the work sustainable. In the rest episode, I referenced Trisha Hershey's work on rest as the resistance. The idea that we are human beings and not machines. Hobbies are one of the most practical ways to live that truth. Lesson learned. The version of you that can sustain long-term excellence is not the one who never stops working. It is the one who has cultivated a life rich enough to make the work meaningful. Action steps. Identify one thing you have always wanted to learn or return to. Something with no professional application, no ROI metric, no goal other than the experience itself. Start there. Schedule your hobbies the same way you schedule your most important meetings. If they are not on the calendar, they will not happen. Resist the pressure to monetize everything you enjoy. Some things are allowed to just be yours. Notice what hobbies do to your thinking. Pay attention to the ideas that surface when your brain is engaged in something non-work related. Keep a small notebook nearby. That's where some of your best strategy will come from. This is the blueprint. So let me bring this back full circle. The series started with wins. It moved through the systems and the strategies. It got honest about the mistakes, and now it ends here with the personal work. Because this is always where it ends, and it's always where it begins again. The prototype I created for my next season, the health foundation I'm rebuilding, the mental work I'm doing to interrupt patterns that cost me, the image I'm developing to close the gap between who I am internally and how I show up externally, the hobbies that keep me human. This is not the finish line. This is the architecture for the next level. You don't grow into your next chapter by doing more of what you've already been doing. You grow into it by doing the inner work that makes you capable of receiving what the next chapter requires. The gaps that allowed for the $300,000 in mistakes were not purely strategic failures. They were personal gaps in my standards, in my patterns, and in my self-perception. And personal gaps require personal work. This blueprint is how I will close them. Not perfectly and not all at once, but deliberately. This week's pivot challenge. Your challenge this week is to build the first draft of your own prototype. Identify 3 to 5 people whose qualities you want to embody in your next season. Pull the specific attributes, write them down. Then look honestly at your current 4 pillars. Physical health. What is working? What's being ignored? Mental health. What patterns are you running that deserve professional attention? Image. Does how you present yourself reflect where you're going or where you have been? Hobbies and restoration. What brings you joy that has nothing to do with your output? And when did you last do it? You don't have to overhaul all 4 at once. Pick one. Commit to one concrete action within the next 7 days. 7 days. And begin. So here are some reflection questions for you. What qualities do I most want to develop in this next season, and who models them? Where is my health, and am I performing wellness instead of practicing it? What pattern has shown up repeatedly in my professional life that I have not yet taken to a professional for support? Does my image reflect the level I am building toward? When was the last time I did something purely for the joy of it? And what does that tell me? As I always like to say, action creates momentum. Momentum builds confidence, and confidence changes how you show up in your business and your life. This series has been one of the most meaningful things I've created in this space because it required me to tell the truth about the wins and the losses, the strategy and the stumbles, the blueprint I'm building, and the gaps I'm still closing. I hope it has given you something real, not inspiration that fades by a Monday morning, but a framework you can actually work. The next version of you is not waiting for a perfect moment. She is waiting for a decision. So make it. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, keep pivoting with purpose. Y'all be easy.